Okay, guys, domestic tourism. Dawn Robertson from Gauteng Tourism was meant to chair the session. She's stuck in Dubai, which I thought, yeah, stuck in Dubai. You know, you're obviously stuck. And then I was thinking Middle East session, 7 flights a day. Anyway, but we are very grateful that cometh the hour, cometh the man, and that wonderful raconteur from last night, Tim Harris, has stepped into the breach. So he's going to be leading the session, and I'll leave him to introduce his panel.
Paul said this was the graveyard shift. I like to think of it more as the climax of the conference. We're here to discuss domestic tourism and how to get it right, working together. We've got certainly the best panel that you could think of to discuss this question. Ian Utemolen is the Global Markets Manager for Marketing and Advertising at South African Tourism. Otto de Vries is the CEO of the Association for South African Travel Agents, SATSA. Judy Lane is the CMO of our little agency, Westgrow. We've got Lisa Sheard, who's the CEO of Kruger Lowveld Tourism, a regional tourism office, and Mark Corcoran, the president of the Southern African Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association. So what we're going to do, I'll give my limited insight into domestic tourism. As I said last night, I'm a newbie to the industry, but the way I see it, there's a lot of upsides to getting this right. It helps with seasonality to have a strong domestic sector because your market is more open to traveling throughout the year. Helps with geographic spread because the popular routes that the internationals like are obviously populated with those tourists, and domestic tourists are more willing to travel and explore more of the country. You sidestep the regulatory issues, which we all know so well from the last few months in terms of inbound. And there's a degree of risk aversion that's missing in domestic tourists. They're prepared to take more risks. They perhaps understand the local context better and are less fearful in a market where perceptions about safety and security can often be a challenge for internationals. So there's a lot of benefits if we can get this right. I'm going to call on Ian first to start and give us a bit of context on SAT's history with domestic tourism, where we're at, and we'll come back later to talk about the approach going forward.
Thank you, Tim. Just as an opening statement, when we analyze a lot of our competitive markets and developed markets around the world, the one thing common, particularly in the Americas, USA, and Europe, in developed markets, domestic tourism is the backbone of their industry. They package around domestic tourism, and they still, differentiate and encourage arrivals to those countries. But the whole mainstay of their tourism industry is domestic. And I wanted to open with that statement, and I'm going to go through some stats of how we're performing, and then we'll bridge back to that opening statement later in the panel discussions. First up, let's just look at the performance of domestic tourism to give you a sense of what's happening in the category. So in 2014, and you've certainly heard this figure by Tulani and the Minister during the various presentations on Thursday and Friday. Domestic trips increased by 11% in 2014 versus 2013 to reach 28 million trips versus the 25 million trips in 2013. What's interesting, though, is that 12 million South Africans took a domestic trip in 2014. So although we didn't grow, it was a flat figure versus 2013. So 12 million in 2013 and 12 million visitors. So basically, if you look at the stats, is that the same people are traveling, but they've traveled more. So what happened is they decided that it's actually an initiative of the South African Tourism Campaign was to get existing travelers to travel more often. So that stat came through in 2014. So 12 million, but we increased by 11% domestic trips. Visiting family, friends and relatives is still the mainstay of the tourism industry, and it accounts for 73% of all domestic trips taken. And this has actually increased to 70% from 70% from 2013. Holiday trips, those are the trips we believe we can best make an impact on. They account for 10% of all domestic trips taken in 2014, and it's down from 12% in 2013. And business trips accounted for 6% of all domestic trips, down from 8% in 2013. Very important, the total revenue generated from domestic trips was just under 27 billion rand, which is an increase of 11% over 2013, which is 24 billion. The average length of domestic trip decreased from 4.4 nights to 4 nights in 2014. However, if you take that there were more trips in 2014, the total number of bed nights, and this is relevant to the industry, the total number of bed nights increased by 2% from 111.3 to 113.1 in 2014. And the biggest barriers to domestic travel is still economics. Around 40% of people that we interview through our domestic surveys mention that they either cannot afford to travel or there's no reason for them to travel, and which sits at about 48%. So that's just a snapshot of the performance in domestic tourism in 2014. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of our campaigns from around 2011. In 2011, we developed Shot Left as a campaign targeting the young and upcoming. And over this period, we were quite single-minded focused. We focused the young and upcoming, a majority black, and the reason being because of apartheid, there's no culture of travel in that segment due to migrant labor systems, due to just a culture of travel. So we defined the young and upcoming as the future for the tourism sector in South Africa. So we were quite narrow-minded in the sense that we just focused in on that sector, and we left the existing traveller, people who travel a lot, and we focused on building that. And what we did in 2011 is we used aspirational or inspirational artists like the Blackjacks, Soweto Rock Band, Cream Cartel, Mary Sabande, Black Coffee. We used those artists to tell a story about travel in South Africa. Very inspirational, and what travel gave them, and the idea was that we'd get more travellers. What we found, though, is that the targeting was too narrow, so we had to expand that segment. And at the same time, we commissioned a research project to really understand and get to the bottom of the travel motivators and the key insights in the domestic travel market. And eventually, we collapsed this to 14 segments, but because of a limited budget, we could only target 5 of these segments where we knew that we could actually win with. And basically, what we were doing is we're actually going to existing travel, and we're going to try and get to those people, those consumers, to travel more often, so to take more trips. We don't have a business problem with Easter and December, because from a holiday point of view, the supply chain, we're quite full, but where we battle is weekends. Every weekend, there's no culture of travel in South Africa. You don't certainly hear, when you sit in a meeting on a Friday, there's not this vibe of where you're shooting this weekend, where you're going. It's very quite boring, so we don't certainly have a culture of travel. But that was 2011. And then 2012, as I said to you, we broadened that segment. And what we did then is we started a new campaign. We believed that Shot Left at that stage, which was fronted our campaign in 2011, possibly lost a bit of relevance, and we needed to come up with something new. And we introduced Via Mzansi, which launched, and it was about visiting your country. The idea we used was to travel like a tourist in your own country. Basically, the best, when visitors visit South Africa, the experiences that they've experienced, we were actually playing on that. But when we analyzed the campaign, what it did is it actually built up a lot of national pride for our market, but it actually didn't encourage any visit to any site. So whilst from a national pride, it could have been a Brand South Africa or an IMC, the old International Marketing Council. It could have been that type of TVC. If you look at the 94 elections, do you remember those when they show the emotional moments around that TVC? There's a phenomenal South African pride that comes with it, same as when the Springboks win or Bafana at that moment. But it didn't impel action. There was no desire to understand or take a visit. So what we did then is we actually went back to the drawing board again. We sliced some more decks, and we looked at, so how do we take this forward? We brought back Shot Left. Shot Left is a campaign, not a brand. And the reason we brought back Shot Left is that it best describes the weekends the breaks we're trying to sell, which is weekends. It's a short break over a weekend. And the equity in the market, it quite surprised us when we did the study of the brand equity that Shot Left had. And it was actually madness to walk away from such equity and try and create Via Mzansi, which had an equity, and particularly with a limited budget and limited focus in the domestic market. So we refined the strategy again, focused on the 5 segments. We then looked again at what is the issue with the category. And the information we had at the time, it told us that tourism is actually quite boring for local domestic travelers. There was nothing inspirational about it. So what we developed is there's nothing more fun than a shot left campaign, which we launched in 2013-14. So we wanted people to visit South Africa, travel the provinces, go to iconic sites, go to immerse in culture, meet people, and that was the whole spirit was about fun. And that took us to the end of 2014. And then we stopped and said, look, it's had a minor impact that it's actually stopped the amount of domestic trips that were declining from 2011. So it's stabilized the market. But if you look at the data, particularly from the fun part was also not inspiring visitors. Because if you're targeting existing people who travel, they already know how to have fun. So that was the issue. Coupled with a budget of a 36 million rand budget to generate demand for domestic tourism, we really got stuck, and that's where we were. So I'll come back and I'll bridge later to the next steps of funding and the way forward for South African tourism and the domestic category of how we believe that we can all win together and really get value out of the local domestic market.
Just to be clear, Vaya Mzansi is no more.
Vaya Mzansi is no more. It's been replaced by Shot Left.
Okay.
It's very important to mention, though, that Shot Left is a campaign. It's not a brand.
Right.
The one thing that we've changed as well is that a lot of people who were working on Shot Left, it actually became a brand. And what we've done very successfully now is we've integrated our international brand, South Africa, which had a specific brand key which focused on international rivals and a strong positioning, but it was actually very relevant to the domestic market. So we've merged the two now, and the brand key, international and the local brand key, actually works phenomenally well for the South African market. So South Africa Inspiring New Ways is our country brand, it's our brand, and Shot Left is the campaign that is there to drive and generate demand for local trips in South Africa.
And what about whatever you are looking for, it is here?
No, we're moving away from that, and I'm going to be sharing with you the new direction. There's 3 jobs that we have to do really well to win with domestic tourism in South Africa. 3 jobs, and if we execute those well, we believe there's a bullish market, and we'll be able to turn the domestic market and hopefully have a mature domestic market going into the future where the trade can benefit from.
Okay, we're looking forward to seeing that. Otto, if you accept the premise that we're underperforming, what can your members do to help?
Well, I think we first got to understand where the resistance lies with regards to a culture of travel and a willingness to want to participate in the concept of leisure travel. But there's a number of opportunities that come with that as well. And we have an emerging middle class that are in a better financial position. There will be certain aspirational components. We've got to present from a marketing point of view that travel and tourism is an aspiration, and it's something that they want to spend exposable income on. Now, not wanting to get ahead of the conversation, and Ian's going to touch on where SAT are going to look at it from a domestic point of view. But what I am encouraged is that there's going to be a lot closer working cooperation between industry and South African tourism, and we'll touch on that just now. But I think from a consumer point of view, if you are new into the travel space, the chance of engaging with the travel agent is very likely as your first point of contact. If you're not familiar with travel, if it's something that you've never done before, if there is an organized, structured industry that are there to support that and to provide you with guidance, not just in terms of the content, but the booking process and seeing you through, there's a huge opportunity to develop loyalty. And as that exposable income grows, what is today a domestic trip may very well be tomorrow's long-haul international leisure.
The ladies on the panel are separated by a bouquet of flowers, but also by, I guess, an ideological divide. Because on the one hand, Judy has a government mandate to do promotion to try and drive domestic tourism, and Lisa is essentially a private equivalent working in the Lowveld to do a similar thing. So there's an interesting question for me about who's best placed to perform a destination marketing role to drive domestic tourism. But maybe, Lisa, if you could start by talking about your experience in the Lowveld and how you think, what your comments are on what Ian and Otto have said so far.
Thanks, Tim. From our point of view, we act as a DMO for the Kruger-Lowveld region, which is one of the 3 districts of the district municipalities in Mpumalanga. But we're in the district called Ishlanzeni, which also means Lowveld or Bushveld in Siswati. The point being, though, is that most of the tourism plant in the province is vested in our region. So we do quite a lot of work on obviously the DMO side of things and attracting people to the area. We are totally unfunded by government, despite the fact that the district and province is actually mandated to fund us. We are not funded. We are self-funding. But what we've done is we've taken an approach of how do we reach out to people who are interested in our area, and how do we make it even more interesting, and how do we make it unusual? What makes it different? So, for example, we produce an annual, what we call the official guide to Kruger-Lowveld. One of the things we've done in there this time is we've put out something called what we call our 10 little gems, which is things that are lesser known, more off the beaten track, sometimes emerging businesses, things that have a unique character about it. And certainly within the domestic market, people bite this kind of interest. However, my big thing, and I just want to add it because it's a sort of a passion of mine, is how do we get particularly young people to get a travel yearning? How do they desire travel and experience and so on? And I thought long and hard about it, and the other night I thought, well, where in a school curriculum, for example, is travel covered? And I'm not talking about from a career perspective, as per the earlier discussions in those first couple of sessions, but where is travel and tourism covered in the curriculum? So I thought, well, I'll go to the Department of Education. I went onto their website and I looked at the grade 10, 11, and 12 geography curriculum. And in sort of, there's demographics, there's urban geography, there's land use, there's conservation, mining, agriculture, and tourism's just not even mentioned there. So, I mean, just at a very basic level, how do we get young people interested in travel? It is not taught at a school level at all, and it's not. It doesn't engender the interest from young people. So I would think that is something that we could consider for getting the travel yearning thing going.
Thanks. Judy, do you want to come in from the government perspective?
So I look at it slightly differently, and I think it potentially could be from my background where I spent 15 years in ad agencies working on FMCG brands. I don't know if you can teach a culture of travel. I think you have to be magnetic. If you look at these really successful brands, they're magnetic. People fall in love with them. They're loyal to them. So one of the things we're looking at what we're doing is how do we make the Western Cape magnetic? The other thing we look at is we're trying to understand how the domestic person is traveling. And generally it's around a sense of urgency. I'm going to a wedding, I'm going to enter an event, I'm going to a festival. So understanding those triggers, how we solving a problem, talking to a trigger and really, really unpacking that. The other thing we're also doing is we're calling de-averaging the visitor. We're not saying you are one kind of visitor, and what we've done is we've really started to focus on experiences. So I mean, I always talk about cycling, and it's not because the Minister and I love cycling, it's because we've really, really got the best cycling tracks in the Western Cape. And cycling is massive. So how are we focusing on the cyclist and getting them here? Another big thing around the Western Cape is as people in the Western Cape, we love wine and food. So how are we creating experiences around that? So we're saying, we're not teaching you to love travel, we're finding your passion points, and we're building the triggers and the messaging around that to try and get you to travel more.
If everyone else here gets this right, what's the impact on the car rental sector?
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, look, what the one thing is for domestic tourism is that and maybe just to give a sense, the Savrada represents car rental, and the average fleet is about 65,000 vehicles for the year, about 3 million rentals, and so 1 in 3, in fact, would be what we'd call local market. And what we've seen is a big shift over the years regarding the airlines. So low-cost airlines really was a big stimulus in terms of weekend travel and the packaging that came from the industry in terms of fly, stay, and drive. And obviously we know there's no car that goes quite like a car rental. So where the advantage is, if the weekend business increases and if everything happens, our industry has a big problem that on the corporate travel where vehicles are in high demand on Tuesday, Wednesday, the vehicles tend to sit around over weekends. So there's a lot of inventory that's there. So if we can try and then, if it all works and you get that culture of travel, our challenge would be to say to people, look, at weekends, treat yourself, hire a vehicle, travel out to all these destinations, and you also then would be able to hopefully try and de-seasonalize and take the spike out of travel. So when you're in the Cape, when there's the industry moves a lot of vehicles down here. Somebody earlier mentioned that they were going to try and fund Lance during December to try and get a vehicle. It's very difficult. Now, if you can de-seasonalize, then you can have fleet in those areas, so you take out that spike. So a growth in domestic tourism is a big factor for our industry in terms of offering the right service to people on a continual basis and the economic spin-off from that.
We can agree there are big benefits. There are a lot of good ideas. The minister has committed 100 million of new money over the next 3 years to drive domestic tourism. How are we going to spend that? Ian?
Okay, so taking into the consideration the challenges that I mentioned up front, i.e. The number of travellers hasn't increased. It's flat at 12 million. Trips have increased. And 48% of South Africans say they cannot afford to travel, which could be articulated as they don't see any value in travelling domestically. We're lucky that we've received a 100 million rand cash injection for 15-16, when we're going to get that in the 16-17 and 17-18. So it's additional 300 million on top of our budget of 35 million, which gives us a great opportunity to actually make a significant impact in the local market. There's 3 things we have to do very, very well. And we've called them job 1, 2, and 3. The first job is we still got to encourage the existing travellers. So we want frequency. So there's no culture of travel needed, because they know, as we talked earlier, they understand the value of domestic tourism. So no culture needed, but they need to be packaged well, and we need to win with insights. There's nothing more fun than a shot left didn't work for them, because they're having fun already. They're having a grand time. They love traveling for weekends. But what they value most is something new. And that's a great new insight that we've picked up on. So if they value what's new, why are we giving them fun? And basically, if you look at our 5 segments, the issue is that new has no price point. If you say to someone new, no one thinks about a price. They think about the experience. So if you go across the 5 segments, there's new adventure, there's educational, there's status, memories, and escape. So we're not just selling another fun holiday. We are selling multiple and new unique experiences that are just a weekend away. So even for the existing market, there is an opportunity to reposition domestic travel, that there's a new, unique experience, but that's got to be packaged well. And Colin did touch on it earlier about the value that we can bring from a trade perspective as well, is packaging what is a new experience and repackage them. So new experiences are what people seek from travel, and with many new, unique experiences on offer domestically, the only way for people to fulfill their needs for newness is to travel more. So that's the job 1, which we're focusing on. For job 2 is working with the trade, partnering with the trade, because we've got to encourage conversion. So we've got to work with JMAs, work together, and really package in the correct way. The biggest challenge, though, is not just having price points. The biggest challenge is having information that's relevant, that generates demand and interest of why I should be traveling. So we're moving away from flight, accommodation, and land to what is the unique experience? How will I benefit from that experience? What is it that I should be doing? And this is where we need to partner with the trade. And the chapter meetings going forward, and Otto touched on his meetings going forward as well, what we'll be sharing is insights. Because you can't package if you don't know, if you don't have the insights. And insights is the golden thread that can put everything together. So we hopefully will be sharing a lot of those new insights and how we can win with this new angle we take in. Just to give you the numbers, I spoke earlier about the 14 segments and the 5 segments that we prioritize because of our budget. It gives us an opportunity with an extended budget to talk to the 14 segments now because we have additional funds. There's 8.2 million South Africans that have the propensity to travel, i.e. their income levels are at the right level, they can travel. If you look at the segment, only 2.8 million holiday trips took place in 2014. So there's a massive gap. And I understand from the trade point of view, if you look at international arrivals, that grew under 7% in 2014. 9.5 million people coming to South Africa with foreign exchange benefits as well, particularly the strength of the rand and the pound. You would package around that because there is value there. So if you take that gap of 5.4 million, if we can close that gap and get to 8 million rand domestic trips, just think of the possible opportunities. But affordability alone is not enough. The value comes from all the potential new experiences the segments didn't know about or have never explored, as new experiences are what they value most. So the shift from the current model and our empowerment model is going to be to talk through those new experiences, possibly in the next chapter meeting. So that's job 2. Then job 3, our most important job of how we've got to fuel the category going forward. We have to create a demand for domestic travel, a culture and a demand. And a culture of travel, as Judy said earlier, it doesn't just happen. So a culture cannot be taught. It's an active involvement and engagement which is required through first-hand experiences. And it's unlike many other living species whose behavior is biologically set. Humans need social experiences to learn their culture and to survive. Think about when you swam for the first time. You can only learn to swim if you get into the water. You can't swim standing outside. And once you're in that water and you learn to swim, you want to do that more because you've learned to swim. And I think that's very real for the tourism industry. If you've never taken a holiday or you've never experienced a break in our 9 provinces, do you understand the benefit of what travel gives you? The family benefit of being together as a family, or the single couples being away, exploring South Africa, getting to know our country, getting to know our history and our sites and our culture. Those are the opportunities we talk about. So it's easier to create a culture than to change one. So it's not about creating a new culture. Changing the culture. It's about creating a new culture is an important point. And we're focusing on the future generations of South African travels will allow us to be more impactful with our efforts, as well as more effort in the long term. So how can we do this? By actually bringing real-life stories about travel. So we've got to capture the emotion. Travel is actually a very emotional category if you get it right. So we've got to capture that. So if we bring all this together, the 3 jobs, frequency, working with the trade, conversion, and building a culture of travel in South Africa, a shared truth exists with all of them. There's always a first time. Every single weekend in South Africa, there's a first time to experience something new. And that is the angle we've got to take as an industry. We've got to message that because newness is what's driving the category. So think what I'm saying. Every single weekend provides an opportunity to experience something you've never experienced before. And first time, we see as an ultimate emotional benefit. So when was the last time you experienced something for the first time? Something different to your average weekend? And our call to action will be 1 million new experiences are quite literally a shot left away. And they'll be packaged and put together. What I want to share with you is a reference material for particularly job 3, which is building a culture of travel in South Africa. I spoke about those first-hand experiences. We actually just been through a casting phase, and we're looking at, and we're about to shoot 4 stories about South Africans who've never traveled before. When you meet these people and hear their story, it is very inspirational. And I've got a reference clip here that James will play shortly. And the reason we're going to show you is have a look at these 2 ladies who've never flown before. Some of you might have seen the clip. But this is their emotions and what it does for the airline category of demand. And this is what we see for the long-term future of creating a culture, is we're actually going to have to bring people into the category, take them on these experiences and actually capture, like I explained to you about swimming that first time, but show the benefit. What does it actually mean when you're in that situation? How does it make you feel? Because emotional benefits can move categories and can actually add to categories, and we see that as a great opportunity. So we're going to just show the clip quickly, and then I'll close on going forward. Thank you.
Wij krijgen sardines voor geen prijs. Ik kan ook nog met de bus ergens komen.
Het is nou dat ik dit kansje krijg, maar anders dan geloof ik niet dat ik ooit zou hebben gaan vliegen nog. Nee. Ik heb nooit gedacht dat ik nog ooit zou vliegen. Ik heb het wel altijd gehoopt.
Je weet het uitschillen, hè? Zit er nog een beetje goed?
Ik versta jou wel goed.
Nee, maar dat wordt ideaal straks. Dan kunnen we zo vanuit Barcelona contact zoeken.
Die zijn wij niet meer opgegroeid, maar goed, dat geeft niet. Ik ga bellen.
Hey, daar gaat zeer champagne, dank je, monsieur.
Ja, hallo. Nou, het was echt heel mooi. Ja, het was heel erg leuk. Het was heel leuk. Oh, lekker in het zand, hè? Nou, zoals u je gedraagt, dat is ook zo.
So did you feel that emotion in there? I mean, that's real. It wasn't set up. So it's proper casting. People have never done something before, and they're the emotions. So we're going to use that, and we're going to be shooting in the first week of September, and we cannot wait to share this new campaign. So my first shot left, and that'll open up new opportunities of what it actually feels like to go on your first shot left. So hopefully going forward in 20 years' time, when we look back at the Fan Court Conference, when we're old and grey, and we reflect back and saying, well, particularly from the investment from the National Department of Tourism and the great work we've done together, it was a game changer in the local domestic market. And we look forward to partnering with you, sharing those insights on you, because every single weekend in South Africa, there's an opportunity to do something for the first time. And the first time has this very strong emotional equity. And hopefully together, the trade and our partners in the provinces that still differentiate each province, just bridge to the brand alignment project in 2009, we agreed that in South Africa, we would not, well, the provinces, we wouldn't change their branding because we want provinces to compete against each other, to have a positioning to ensure that consumers would understand why they need to visit each province. So hopefully as we all work together, we can have the biggest impact as a team South Africa, making a big impact in the local market. And we look forward to taking that journey with you because it's Team South Africa, domestic market. Thank you.
So do you buy it? Do you think it's going to work? We've got 10 minutes for questions. Yes, sir. And if you'd please introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Andre from Discover Africa Group. Do you, or any of the panelists, do you have a big, hairy, audacious goal for the number of domestic travelers 5 years from now? You mentioned the 12 million doing 28 trips. What number will you be reporting in 5 years?
We've set a target of 20 million by 2020.
Great. There's one more question at the back, and then I'll come to the front.
Hi, I'm Alfred from Home From Home. I just want to know, it's a question for Judy regarding the campaign that you're running regarding experiences. Cape Town Tourism is also running a campaign called Hello Weekend. Now, what I want to know is it the same sort of campaign? Are you running that concurrently, or are you running a completely different campaign?
Hi, we work incredibly closely with Cape Town Tourism, so there's a really good alignment in strategies between the provincial and the city tourism strategy. We don't run campaigns like they do. We don't have the budgets, and we look at it slightly differently. So what we're trying to do through more social media is bring lists to life and experiences to life. We look at educationals that we do that bring experiences to life. So we've just recently done one in stargazing in the Karoo. We look at media hosting. So we look at it slightly different to Cape Town Tourism, where they're looking at driving their conversion to their members. Can I just quickly, this is like now I'm asking Ian a question, can I do that? Sorry. Ian, what I absolutely loved about that, and where I see our role as a provincial body and potentially the trade, is you create that emotion. So it's like when you're watching a TV ad of a car, you want that car, but when you go into the showroom floor and you chat to the salesperson, they convert you. So you creating the emotion, ourselves as provincial and trade need to create that conversion about actually making it tactile and affordable and doing it. So well done.
I agree with you, and that's why I said it's Team South Africa. It's a partnership with the trade. We can create demand and show the value of those stories, but it's the way the trade packages as well. And a closing comment for the trade as well is that, you know, if you want to win with the, you know, if you looked at the digital stats presented in the tour operator session, there's still lots of value in trade, but you've got to make sure that if you want to win, you've got to create what's scarce about your offer, what's unique about your offer, and then actually package the new and different experiences in your region of why people should actually go there, what they're going to experience. It's not just about the flight and accommodation in the car.
So a question there.
Hi, Andrew from Cape Africa Tours. Just something practical. I mean, I'm sure you've thought about it, but most families with school-going children can't go away on the weekends because the kids are playing sport or they've got a party or there's something happening. So apart from the peak seasons, I mean, when you're targeting your campaigns, are you thinking about how to get family? It's just impractical most of the time on a weekend to go on a domestic trip. I've also had a personal thing about the short left campaign. I mean, it looks to me like shot left. And I've had a couple of overseas people saying, what's this thing about? I mean, we've heard about crime, but this shot left thing, you know, so I mean, this is my thing. But the family thing on the weekends.
Well, there's two questions. I'll take them both quickly. The first point, we have 5 segments, now 14. Each segment has families, singles, couples. So it's broken up, so it's not just targeting families at all. It's just like single couples, single people. So there is certain dovetailing that's got to happen over the segments. The additional investment gives us an opportunity to communicate to more of the segments as opposed to the 36 million that gave us a very limited focus. So your comment will probably be right. Shot left, it's in fact the second time I've heard that in my 8 years of tourism. When we did market insights about the equity, we were very surprised about the articulation of a shot left. The unaided awareness of shot left is extremely high in the marketplace. So, and it best describes what we're trying to sell, which is a short break. So I don't think there should be confusion about it. We brought it back not because we wanted to. We brought it back because the consumer, and that's the South African tourism philosophy. We develop insights, superior insights that we can win with. So it wasn't just, no, we'll go with it. It was actually our consumer heartland telling us, sure, they love shot left. It actually describes what it means for a weekend.
There were 2 questions at the front. Let's take them both, and one here as well. We'll take all 3 and try and get more in that way.
Hello, I'm Daniel from Stellenbosch. Just a thought on your way that you launch the campaigns. As I see the growing middle class as they need to decide where to spend their money. And my experience is that they spend their money mostly on education, educating their children. So if you want to show them that it's actually education to show them the country, to show them the world, it's a much better way than to show them fun, because that fun is high on the Maslow hierarchy, but education is much lower. Just a thought.
Thank you for those positive comments. What I said earlier is news articulated different for each segment. So for some segments, educational is the key driver, and that's what we've got to package around that. For some, it's adventure. For some, it is status, and some, it's memories that they can build together as a family unit, and the other one is escape from your normal. But I totally endorse that and support that.
Over here. Yeah.
Hello, Rang from Inspirational Travel. This is directed, I think, at Otto. As a DMC and tour operator that work with South African travel agents, we were wondering for a long time whether there would actually be a market to sell South Africa through South African travel agents. And much to our amazement, that is actually a department that's grown very well. And because we thought that South African travel agents know South Africa, but they don't. So if you ask a travel agent in Johannesburg where the Cederberg is, they haven't got a clue. Ask somebody in Durban where Pilansberg is, and they really don't have a clue. So I think into this whole campaign from SAT needs to be some more training of our local travel agents.
Absolutely, and I think South African tourism has played a role in that. They do already provide a number of platforms. We've certainly been engaging with them in terms of ensuring that the content is relevant and that it speaks to the activities that we're looking to do. So if there is an opportunity for a travel agent to play in the space where they deliver domestic leisure tourism offerings, part of that is understanding what you're selling. And it is certainly aligned with what SAT are already offering, and we work and we'll continue to work very closely in ensuring that the content and the geographic components are disseminated and shared, and that training happens. It's ongoing. For a travel agent, and somebody mentioned it earlier on, they're supposed to know everything, and it's quite difficult, you know. You never know what kind of customer is going to come at you next or what their expectations are. So, you know, it's very difficult to make an assumption or an expectation that the travel agent knows it all. But the opportunity is for them to then find out what it is that is going to help the customer in delivering it. I think what I'm quite excited about is, first of all, the awareness process is key. So, and developing this new market is key. We will come in and we'll be a lot more involved in job 2. And we've got some real good opportunities in terms of some low-hanging fruit here, because we're already very involved in corporate travel, maybe not so much on domestic leisure, but certainly on domestic corporate. And it's an area where we can expand upon. If people are already traveling for work, the opportunity and the possibility that they're going to extend that with some leisure activity is very real. And I think that that's some quick wins that we can get, because developing new markets takes time. So I think that there will be a process, and the content and the packaging needs to speak to understanding that this is going to be a process that will take some time.
Thanks. Okay, last question, I'm afraid we have to close.
Hi, Marie-Louise from Gravity Adventures. We do a couple of day trip type adventure activities around Cape Town, but my question is more related to stuff that we and many others do in the more rural areas, specifically the Northern Cape, Orange River rafting, that kind of thing. South Africa is a huge country. If you want to encourage people to travel, it's big distances, we're talking flights. Airlink into Uppington is ridiculously expensive. How do we address those kinds of issues to get people to travel further within our country?
Hi. I think the first step is we need them to leave their house. So, so what we say to our guys is literally draw a circumference around your town, a 2-hour drive, and go target those people. Because if they drive 2 hours, they'll then see the value, and potentially as soon as people see the value in something, price becomes less of a barrier. So, you know, the thing is we're at the stage in the Western Cape is how do we get people to just travel the 2 hours? We're also looking, as part of one of the projects we're working on, around local transport. So how are we working with the rail, with PRASA, you know, using rail as a possible solution around traveling long distances in the Western Cape. We've got some of the low-cost airlines which are changing travel. And then once again with the transport companies in terms of the buses, how can we work with them to generate domestic tourism?
I don't know, Lisa or Mark, do you have any last comments you want to make?
The one thing I would just say, they can also hire a car, of course, within their 2-hour drive. I think the one thing is that and a lot of that, and I missed yesterday, but even this morning's conversation about certification, standards, regulation, a lot is about the customer experience. So you want to make sure that people have good experience. And certainly for those of us that are within the industry, within the Tourism Business Council, the role of associations are quite important. And I think that what we've got to do is we've got a unique opportunity to get momentum around tourism in terms of within the government, but also it means that when we're using our suppliers, that we're using suppliers that are within the community of the associations. So obviously from my point of view, Jenny, I'm not sure if Jenny is here, we've had like issues with people not using Savrada members, and then it's difficult for us to resolve those issues. So when you're dealing with members that are either with SATSA or FedHasa or with all of these associations, it's at least some sense of oversight and an ability to manage that if there is a problem with a customer experience as a dispute, you can correct it, because you don't want people having this big growth and then people having bad experiences. You need to make sure that people have good experiences and the mechanisms are in place to make sure that that can be addressed. So obviously what I would punt is that to make sure that you're using your Savrala members so we can help in making sure that you get a good experience. Thanks.
Lisa, you happy?
Yeah, thanks. Just a last comment on something that's been touched on is the impact of events for domestic tourism. I mean, we cannot underestimate that, certainly in our part of the world where we sit sort of 3 to 4 hours drive from your Gauteng market, events bring enormous number of people in, and the spin-off, particularly for rural towns, and that is significant. And the spend, you see it happening in front of your eyes. So I think that certainly in our case, where we are a rural as opposed to a city type of place, that certainly brings a lot of benefits for our members and for the area.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm afraid I need to wrap. I want to say 3 things. Firstly, the word collaboration and the idea of working together is the most overused concept in government. What's really exciting about this is that it's just happening. You see all of the role players in agreement, all very excited about the campaign. It's genuine collaboration that happens. You don't need to talk about it. It's just real and it's there. So that's really something that I take out of this. Number 2, they say you never forget your first time. And I think you probably will always remember this because it was the first time you heard about the first time campaign at SATSA, George. So that's another take home. Do you want to?
I just want to say another brief story. The battery might have run out.
No, here we go. That also concerned us, my first, because it can be articulated in so many different ways. But the hashtag will be my first shot left, and that's how we're going to position it. So because we thought about that, and yeah, so it actually could be counterintuitive. But thank you, Tim. Yeah.
And then just because I've got the mic, so the session's closed. Thank you very much. But I wanted to say thank you to David. It's extraordinary the leadership that he's displaying of this organization. It's been you can see it in the spirit and the enthusiasm at the conference, but also I've had first-hand experience doing some pretty difficult lobbying and advocacy with David, and I can promise you there's no one better at that than your CEO. He's got this amazing ability to hold the line and fight his corner, but make people feel as if he's part of the same team that they're on. And the only reason I think we have this breakthrough with this ministerial review on the visa regulations is because of David. So thanks for that contribution, and thanks for what has been an extraordinary conference.
Thank you, Tim, for those very kind words, and thanks for stepping in and so ably managing that wonderful team. Guys, that's it. I just want to thank you all for being who you are, for being the cool people you are. It's been such a treat being with you guys over these 3 days. Travel well. We'll reconvene next year. Hopefully a little bit bigger, but hopefully what we'll say is anybody who was here this year gets in first and you get your slot secured. Go well. Cheers.